Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 6, Episode 2 of FX's Snowfall, entitled The Sit Down. Man, I know I was a little bit, I don't want to say apathetic, but I wasn't, fully just into Episode 1. There was a lot of stuff I liked, but there were some things I didn't like, and I kind of let my displeasure with Season 5 kind of bleed into Season 6, because a lot of that stuff that I had issues with in Season 5 kind of reared its head a little bit in Episode 1. So I tried to balance some of my criticisms with the stuff that I liked, but from my perspective, it was a good episode, but it was like, okay, that was fine. We needed an episode to kind of like set the stage for the season and pick back up where we left off with Season 5. This one though, I fuck with this episode heavy. Like, I thought this was a great episode. I think it had one of the best all-time Snowfall scenes in this episode, which is what the title is based on. We're going to talk about that. But I also think it had a lot of other great stuff that I'm really interested in. And it gave me another big, giant fucking theory to talk about. So let's talk about the episode title. It's called The Sit Down. This is obviously based on the scene that happens at the end of the episode where Franklin and Jerome have a fucking powerful and emotional conversation in this diner. I love that scene because you don't get that sort of emotional weight in that scene without having done your work. You can't, if you've ever heard or read a critic say that something is earned or unearned, this is, I think, what they're talking about. I can't speak for them. I'm not them, but this is how I would define earned or unearned. If they tried to have this scene between Franklin and Jerome without all of the backstory that we have between these two, the scene doesn't work, which means it's unearned. You're trying to get this scene to resonate with us emotionally. You're probably trying to get an emotional reaction out of us, but it's not gonna work if you haven't already put in all that work before this. So you're working for an unearned emotional response. This was an earned response because they've done all that work. Last season, the show started putting the idea out there that Jerome was having regrets about his path and his actions. And now, because of his decisions and I would say his inability or his just lack of a desire to talk sense into Louie and stop her from making bad decisions, he's now in a place where he's got family pulling guns on family, and his nephew, and these two have been great together this entire series. We've loved the Franklin-Jerome dynamic this whole show. His nephew's pointing a gun in his face. And he tells this story of how he was in a really dark place in LA. Sissy moved out there. Franklin was born. He thought, I'm going to be this kid. I'm going to be a father to this kid. And it helped bring him out of a dark place. And it's such an emotional story because you don't see that side of the Jerome character. He's always this guy who, he's who he's expected to be. And it can't be this person who shares this kind of emotion like this. and opens up like this. This isn't the Jerome we are allowed to see, because you can't be in the game and show that kind of emotion. But look at the place that he's at right now. And he's telling this story about how they brought him out of a dark place, and he's like, and I just wonder, where did I fuck up to make you? I really don't. I try not to say the N-word on this on this channel. I'm not gonna do it now, but on God, I want to. But y'all know what he said, and man, I love that line. It was such a great line, and it's like what I was just saying about how the whole story that he was telling leading up to that was so out of character for Jerome to open up and be emotional like that. For him to punctuate that story with a very Jerome line, I loved it. And now he's got Franklin sitting across from him, like saying terrible things about Louis, calling her all kinds of stuff. Of course he's gonna beg to get shot, right? Because this isn't what he wanted. This is so far from what he ever wanted. He didn't even want to expand. Like, you remember how Louis wanted to hit like St. Louis and all this kind of shit? We see them talking with the deaf dude in this episode. Like that was all Louis. Like Jerome didn't want to do that shit. He wanted to scale things down. And now he's beating Black Diamond to death. And it's not because he wanted to or it's what's needed to happen. It's because it's what's expected of him. And that is so fucking powerful to me. I thought this scene was powerful. Amin Joseph, they both like fought through tears, which I loved in this scene. I loved it from Jerome. I loved it from Franklin. But like for Amin Joseph in this scene, man, like no bullshit, no hyperbole. I feel like they should submit that for Emmy consideration. He did such a great fucking job. And it's a shame that a show like this that kind of flies under the radar can get acting performances like that no one's gonna fucking see, or no one who matters is gonna fucking see, because it's just some fucking black show on FX. But that man, he fucking crushed that scene, man. And I want to give Amin Joseph his flowers, because that was a great fucking performance, man. Like, shout out to him, man. If I could see him, I'd shake his hand. I don't give props like this to acting performances often, but he crushed that scene. And I'm not shading Damson either. He did great in that scene too. But there was so much that the Jerome character had to work through in that scene, and so much emotion and emotion that they built up through the entirety of this series with his confliction over being in this game, getting deeper in this game, bringing the people that he cares about into harm's way, Franklin, his sister, all of that emotional weight in a scene where you're sitting across from the person who you thought was going to be your son, you were going to raise to be your son. He's got a gun in your face. Like, that was such a powerful scene, and he did such a great job, man. Like, man, I loved it. That scene was enough for me to be like, yo, this episode was the fucking shit, man. But unfortunately, there was other great stuff in this episode too, and I don't want to linger on this scene, even though I'd love to watch it again. I thought it was such a great scene. I've already watched it a couple of times, but I think I need to move on before this ends up being a 30-minute video of me me dick riding Amin Joseph. I don't want it to be that. So moving on. Parissa says she got a good look at the guy who ended up chasing her out of the car, which of course we know was Ruben. I don't like Parissa, obviously, but I like what this sets up. Teddy's gonna find out about the guy who's after him, and I like what that's gonna end up looking like, or what that could end up looking like. I don't know what it is gonna look like, but what it could end up looking like. And there's some other things in this episode that kind of set up that conflict as well. But Teddy calls up Gustavo because he has a pick of Ruben, and he wants to ask him about, hey, do you know this guy? And I thought that was funny because I'm like, did Parissa draw that sketch? Like is Parissa was she like a police sketch artist back in the day too, when she was in Tehran or some shit? I don't know. I'm sure there's probably an explanation that I just missed for why Teddy would have this police sketch of Ruben, but I don't know. It's funny to me, the idea that she might have given it to him. What probably happened is, in jail, she was asked to describe the person who chased her, and she did, and then they drew Ruben. But I like the idea that she drew it. Sorry. But Teddy later shows the sketch to Gustavo, and of course, he's like, I don't know who that is. How would he know? But he later takes the sketch, he being Gustavo, he takes the sketch to Franklin. I said he as if I had mentioned Gustavo already. He takes the sketch to Franklin after matching it up with a pic on his fridge of Ruben from Jerome and Louis' wedding. And Franklin tells him, he'll tell him everything you need to know about this guy. He just needs to help Franklin get Teddy. And like I said in the last video, all plots converging toward Teddy and Franklin. Just think of one Mike's funnel. The funnel that's leading into to Teddy and Franklin. It's all that shit's narrowing, man. We also learned, like I said, when I was talking about this scene, the Jerome scene, the Black Diamond dies. Franklin goes to visit Dallas, and she tells him she's out the game. Like, we had a pact. If something happened to us, the other person is out. No questions asked. But then we learn that Black Diamond's son don't even know she's dead yet. And that fucking wrecked, like, man. Like, when he came in, it was like, when is mommy gonna be home? I'm like, yo, I didn't even think about that. Like, who's gonna tell this kid about what happened to his mom? Apparently it ain't gonna be Dallas. Like, but then again, I also don't know how much time has passed. She might just be trying to, like, get it together. Because, like, we see earlier that when she's told that Black Diamond didn't make it, maybe that took place 1 hour before this scene. So maybe she just hasn't had a chance to tell him. But the idea that the kid doesn't know yet, yeah, that was brutal, man. So in the last video, I talked about Ruben wanting to loop Franklin in on his plan with Sissy. In this episode, Franklin meets with Ruben at a museum. And Ruben wants proof that the CIA has been doing what the CIA did, both in real life and in the show, giving drugs, dumping drugs into the black community. And Franklin wants Teddy, but he wants Teddy alive. Franklin also informs Ruben that he can't help him with Teddy because he no longer works with him, but he also does steer Ruben in the direction of Jerome and Louis. How convenient. That might work in Franklin's favor. And we end the scene with Ruben opening a briefcase, and he says something about trust. And at the time, I'm like, what could be in that briefcase that would have to do with trust? And then Franklin just started talking about Teddy and shit. But it come to find out in a later scene, we come to understand that the briefcase had a tape recorder in it. And that's why Franklin just started talking when Ruben opened the briefcase. We also learn that they're going to start surveilling Gustavo in hopes of him being able to lead them to Teddy. And I think that's interesting because it makes me wonder, like, are we going to end up with, like, an America versus KGB, like, shootout where Ruben and the KGB are coming after Gustavo because they want to get to Teddy, but the DEA, who is working with Gustavo and using him as an informant, needs to protect him because they also want to get to Teddy. Like, y'all got the same goal, which is Teddy, but it feels like it's going to end poorly, like, for Gustavo, because they're going to, like, he's going to get caught in a crossfire or some shit, and they don't even realize that they have the same goal probably because they're too busy fucking being DEA and CIA agents, and they're probably gonna have some ridiculous dick measuring contest instead of having a conversation that would resolve everything. I know I'm going really far here, but I still like the direction this is heading because it does feel like that's what's happening. Like I said, everything converging on Teddy and Franklin. I'll do my little cone funnel thing. With it. I was gonna call it they call it on Rick and Morty, cum gutters. We call it the cum gutters of the story. The cum gutters are leading to Teddy and Franklin. If you haven't seen Rick and Morty, you're probably not gonna get that, but if you have, you're probably losing your shit right now. So I'm also not sure. I'm not sure what year this season is taking place. I want to say it was like it would be the same year as season 5, and I feel like that was like 1986-ish. But I'm also wondering, too, are we going to start to get kind of like Cold War vibes here? Like, we're talking about the KGB. We're talking about, now I've just talked about this idea that the U.S. and KGB could end up going at one another, even though they're both going after Teddy, but they just don't know it. Like, I don't know. I feel like they might kind of lean into some Cold War shit. I mean, it's 80s. It's Russia. It's even timely now, considering the United States' relationship with Russia. So I could see that. I could see that happening. Let's see. So I mentioned in my review for episode 1 that I felt like Sissy Farrakhan was doing a little bit too much. Well, in this episode, she continues to lean into her Dr. Umar vibes as she talks about feuding with Jerome being exactly what Teddy wants. She's like, like how white people wanted to pit the house slave versus the field slave and the light skin versus the dark skin. And I'm like, that's all true, but it just doesn't feel right for the character. Like, do this feel like Sissy to y'all? Like, she's just too fucking hotep. Like, this don't feel like Sissy to me. So, like, I feel like Sissy continues to be an example of a character who's so far detached from who she was at the start that it feels unnatural, even though it kind of also feels like the natural progression for that character. But I'm going to be talking about other characters who are so far from what they were in a moment. So, if you already know who I'm talking about, but we'll get there. Franklin gets a page from Kane, and he wants Jerome and Louis and Buckley. But most importantly, as soon as he said, You want to know what's hard? You want to know what's difficult? You wondering if your leg's ever gonna work again? As soon as he said that, I was like, his next sentence is gonna be about his dick. Wondering if your dick is ever gonna work again? Like, that's us, man. We get shot in the spine. Our first question: I can't feel my legs. Am I ever gonna be able to walk again? Right before, soon as you hit that period on, am I ever gonna be able to walk again? Which would be a question mark. As soon as you hit that question mark, the next thought is my dick ever gonna work again? Guarantee it. But so I just thought that was funny. That's the only reason I mentioned it. I'm like, yeah, of course the next question is gonna be about his dick. But Gustavo and the DEA guy, I really got to learn his name. It's their fault for like taking him out of the show for all of those seasons with what was Gustavo's chick, Lucia. It's their fault for taking him out the show. I can't remember his name now. But the DEA guy, they go to see the tunnel that he asked Gustavo to see in episode 1. I like how it's like in a house, like, well, at the bottom of a house. I thought that was kind of cool. But he gets a page from, well, actually, before the page, I want to talk about first, when they pull up at the house, the DEA guy tells Gustavo that Teddy is the prize. Again, cum gutters toward Teddy and Franklin. That's gonna be about cum gutters toward Teddy and Franklin. But once they get in the house and they get in the tunnel, hold on, wait a minute. I think I took this part out of my notes by accident, but it's a good thing I still want to talk about it. They get in the tunnel, and Gustavo gets a page, and it's from Teddy, and he goes out and he says he's gonna tell the guy that the DA guy. He tells the DA guy he's gonna tell Teddy that I can't remember what the lie, but it was some lie. And the guy tells him, like, don't lie to him. Tell him as close to the truth as possible. Tell him that you in the tunnel and you're just doing maintenance. And he does that. And I love the dynamic of one agent being in Gustavo's ear, telling him what to say to another agent who is also in Gustavo's ear. I just love that dynamic. But more importantly, I love how it's not going to work. And Teddy's going to figure this out for sure. But now I want to talk about something I didn't like. Like I said, I talked about characters who are so far detached from who they were previously and how they seem like caricatures of who they used to be. And these are signs of signs that the show has kind of jumped the shark when they make characters like borderline ridiculous, or in this case, completely fucking ridiculous. Who is Scully? Who is that guy? That wasn't Scully. That was like George Carlin's goddamn hippy dippy weatherman. Like, that was goddamn Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like, he's got origami hanging from the ceiling. Like, he's scared of Kane. Like, oh, Kane's a big dog. Who is that guy? That's not season 4 Scully. I don't know who that guy was, but whoever that was a joke. Like, that, I did not like that about the episode at all. I thought Scully was one of the coolest characters on the show, and now they've got him like whatever the fuck that was. Like, not a fan of that. I did like his burger phone, but not a fan of what they did to Scully. I don't need that like corny kind of like almost like comedic relief from Scully. Like, don't have him popping up every episode with some dumb hippie shit. I don't want to see that. But my second fart, you're gonna understand why I said that. My second favorite part of this episode, after the Jerome Franklin scene that I talked about at the beginning, is the scene where Franklin meets with Veronique's mom, who has apparently graduated from scammer to goddamn Olivia Pope, who can steal $73 million from the government now. Again, another kind of like a bit of a reach, right? She's just a random like, oh, Veronique's mom, she could help us steal $73 million back from the government. All right. But in addition to that just being a funny idea, this scene helps spark what is now my ultimate grand unifying theory. So her mom talks about Teddy not being able to do this alone, and before she could say one other word, I thought, what if Alton is involved? I was upset last season that they never really confirmed he was dead. Like, they didn't. If you think they did, go back and watch it. They did not. They just have all sorts of questions. People asking, Teddy, did you have something to do with this? With what happened to Alton? What happened to Alton? And everyone assumes he's dead. But they never confirmed that. And that bothered me until I let it go, because the show assumed he was dead. The characters assumed he was dead. He never came back. So I was like, well, I guess he's dead. Well, guess what, baby? Alive Alton back on the table. What if Teddy never killed him and just took him hostage? Like, I could see Alton even being incentivized to help steal Franklin's money, not out of a place of like not out of like mean-spirited kind of way, but it could help. From his perspective, he probably thinks he's helping Franklin. Like, oh, that could help get him out the game. That could help keep him safe. Or maybe he did it against his will. Like Teddy put a gun to his head and said, impersonate Franklin. I don't know what impersonate Franklin looks like. But as soon as Franklin said somebody could impersonate me, or as soon as the mother said something about impersonating him, I feel like we all should have thought, what if Alton is alive? Not just me. Who else is going to impersonate Franklin? He's got his goddamn DNA. This is the closest person to be able to impersonate him, especially if everyone thinks he's dead. It fucking works, man. So, alive Alton, baby. Back on the table. Grand unifying theory. Alton was never killed. He is still alive. And Teddy used him in some way to help steal Franklin's money. And I still will not, if that happens, not only am I going to take props right now in 2023 for saying it, I'm going to take props in 2022 for saying it, because I never believed Alton was dead in the first place, and I got video proof. So if he's alive, I'm like giving myself double points. And in the last episode, Franklin made, this is the last thing I want to talk about before I get to my thoughts. In the last episode, Franklin made some really good points in his phone convo with Jerome about how, like when y'all were playing me and not helping me out, it was business. He wanted the money for his real estate stuff and all that kind of shit, right? They didn't want to help him out. And he was like, yo, when it was like that, it was business. But now when I steal back some of the money that I helped you make, now it's personal. Like, and I thought, okay, that's a good point, Franklin. Well, in this episode, Jerome makes some good points about Franklin in his conversation with Sissy that I thought was cool. Like, he's like, Franklin stole from me. He pulled a gun on my wife. He dropped 4 bodies at my club. He turned his own mom into a drug dealer. And like, I love that scene because I love how the show is showing us that both Franklin and Jerome justifiably, I think, feel validated in their actions. They both feel that they are right and the other person is wrong. Now, I'm not saying their actions are valid and that they're doing what they should be doing. They're obviously doing the wrong thing, but it doesn't matter whether it's the right or wrong thing. It matters whether or not they think it's the right or wrong thing. And both of them made very valid points about how the other person screwed them. And that's going to give them that validation. Like, I know I'm right, and that's all that matters. That's going to be the pig-headed focus. I know I'm right, and I know he's wrong. And I think that's a good direction to take the show. Like, listen, after that speech at the end of this episode and everything we've seen between Jerome and Franklin and Louis so far in just these 2 episodes, we're in for a really good fucking season, man. Like, if they could cut down on this, like, Scully, like that kind of shit, cut down on Sissy being so fucking hotep, and then they're not gonna do that. That's how these characters are gonna be. It's probably gonna irritate me. Whatever, maybe I'll get used to it. But they're doing so much great stuff with Franklin and Jerome right now, and I'm really excited to see where this is going. So, a couple of quick thoughts before I wrap up. We're 2 episodes in. Where the fuck's Leon? Leon's like my favorite character. I need Leon back. Like, next episode, if I don't see Leon, I'm pissed. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but because you need to have a good picture to notice it. Because I watched this episode twice, and I watched it once where I had a good picture, and then I watched it once with a not so great picture, and it wasn't as clear on the not so great picture. But after Franklin left the museum, I love this. Him and Sissy just casually run a red light. Like you can see, like, the light is red as they approach the intersection, and Franklin just casually drives through it. And it's just a reminder that they don't film these scenes on open roads. Anyway, that's all I got. I will see you guys next week for episode 3, and until then, peace.